Hello and welcome to Twin Creeks Farm. If you enjoy this content, please like and subscribe to get notified of our latest videos. You can also follow us on Instagram at Twin Creeks Farm 2020. This week we were doing our first cut of hay. We'll do 2 cuts this year. It's not a great hay field. I don't know what year it'd be in, but it's fairly spent, so there's a lot of grasses, so you don't get a strong second cut. So we'll be cutting, raking, and baling into our family just small squares. That's the equipment that we have. We'll do small squares. We'd have to rent out anything else. So if we want to do rounds or big squares, we just don't have the equipment for that. And also we store it in the mow of our, it's an old dairy barn. We store the hay up above where the cows are. So it's easiest to store there, and then I'll show you later. We just drop it down a hole and it's pretty much ready to be fed to the cows there. So in terms of feeding inside the barn, for us it's the most convenient way to feed, and then we'll have some oats and peas later in the year that we'll get round baled for our beef cows that we can then just put in the feeders outside, so that'll be the easiest way to feed them. Well, I was a few minutes away from going to cut hay, so I guess I'm glad it came when it did. That makes up my mind on whether or not I'm cutting hay. The forecast was kind of chance of rain the next few days, but I was considering chancing it. But turns out I would have been wrong. So we'll see. Even after this passes, I think it'll all be too wet to cut today. We're kind of mid-afternoon now, so the earliest we'll be cutting tomorrow. But still happy to have the rain. At this point, it won't do anything for this cut of hay, but it'll help for the next cuts, and it'll do a lot for my oats and the oats and peas. This is our hay bine. It's a New Holland 469. It's a mower conditioner. So what it does is, well, there's this shaft here that runs off of what's called the PTO, or power takeoff. So it spins this, which then there's a set of gears in here and wheels, wheels and pulleys that it drives that, and basically it runs everything on the hay bine. What happens is this rotates with these tines, and they push all the hay towards the back here, where you can see these teeth, and they run back and forth and they cut the hay, and then the tines will push it up the back and through these rollers. And you see there's these grooves on these rollers that they squish the hay in between, and they crush the stem, which lets kind of the moisture out, and it helps you dry the hay quicker, because you're always trying to get the hay off before rain. So you want a nice dry hay. Once it gets rained on, it's just instantly not nearly as nice. Hey Zoo. And then it just comes out the back, and you can adjust how wide it'll shoot out the back. So we leave ours fairly wide, so that some people will go narrower and then they'll tether it out, but we put it wide, and when we're ready to cut and rake, or to rake and bale, I mean, then we'll bale it. And so you can adjust the amount of pressure that are on the rollers then, because if you're too tight, then you might jam up your rollers a little bit, but you do want it enough that it'll crush those stems. And then there's just the one hydraulic on it just to lift and lower the head. So it's nice. It's fairly simple. It's 9 feet wide, so it does what we need it to do. Wondering what that bang was. It's just a little bit of a branch left from, I cleaned up this tree. I guess I missed a little bit. So, it's better that than a rock though. But while we're off, check on the... So our haybine is a mower conditioner. It's got a couple of rollers in it that are supposed to crush the stems. See there? So it's doing an okay job, I guess. See, that's not really crushed, whereas that is. So it crushes it to help it dry out quicker. This is the one of our tractors. It's an International 574. It's the bigger of our two. Well, really we have three, but we use two tractors. So I did most of the cutting and raking with it. We left the baler on the 434 because it's the tractor that we bale with, and the baler's the hardest thing to take on and off. So this kind of became the multi-purpose tractor. And this is our rake. So like I was saying with the haybine, it will drop it out the back at probably about 7 feet wide. It's not, what it drops isn't quite the full 9 feet, so it's probably about 7. So what this will do then is these this spins, and at the front, when these teeth, when they tines, they drop down, they'll get right down to the ground level and they'll pull it all over. and then this stops the hay from just getting thrown out past. So it makes a nice kind of 2 foot wide, depending on how much hay you're actually raking up, little row so that the baler can pick it up easily. So it's really simple, but it's nice because then if you were just to bale with with how wide it comes out of the hay vine, it wouldn't pick it all up. So this whips it up into a nice row, and when it's up and all, it kind of fluffs it all up so the air can flow through it nicely. Just gonna start baling just so we can keep track. Start off at 0. You see the tines, they pick up the hay up here, and then this auger pushes it over, and then there's a fork that keeps pulling it over, and then there's this plunger here that packs it all back, and we use these springs here to set the tension to how heavy of a bale, because it'll pack it more. So we're aiming for about a 50-pound bale, and it's kind of ideally between 55 and 45. And this stores our twine. It wraps up the bale. So it pushes through, and then it's kind of hard to explain, but essentially it threads the twine up there so that it runs kind of top and bottom of the bale, and then once it gets to the desired length, then it'll make a knot and tie it off, and right in here it'll be really loose like that. It'll seem like there's a lot of extra twine, but by the time, which is like the string that wraps it up, by the time all of the pressure from the springs is off of it, then it actually is a lot more. Again, you still can't really see it. You can't really see it quite yet. There is more tension there than on that one. But once the springs are off compressing it, then it's fairly normal. It's not loose like that. But that's kind of how our baler works. It's an old John Deere 14T. We've got 2 of them on the farm, and they work well enough for what we're doing. And then the International 434 is our baling tractor. It just seems to fit the baler better. Anyhow, that's that. This is an elevator. We use it for, well, in this case we use it for hay, but we also use it for grain to move it into storage. There's a grain bin there, so we just put a little attachment on the end. But just put the bale on and the paddles drive it up, or it'll do the same with the grain. It just makes it a heck of a lot easier to get material anywhere. You probably can't see it terribly well. That says 1,079. It keeps track of how many bales you've baled, so you can reset it as often as you want to. But so that was the total through, but it doesn't keep track of any. It doesn't minus for any broken ones or anything, so I kind of kept track of that. So we ended up right around 1,050. What'll happen sometimes, and it's actually, you can see right now there's there's 3 twines here, which there shouldn't be. And what happens sometimes is it'll tie a knot but not release it properly, so you end up with a lot more twine, and basically you won't end up with a knot on a bale. So you've either got to tie it together or just put it through the baler again. So that's one of the, that'll be something that happens. And then when you're starting a new roll of twine, that sometimes that knot that you do to tie the 2 balls together, sometimes it comes apart. Sometimes the knot just slips when you go to lift the bale. So there's a few different reasons why, but just sometimes the bales break, so you have to put some of them back through. So like I say, we ended up with about 1,050, which, considering the first cut that some people around here are having, because we're having really dry year, it's not completely terrible. We won't be short on hay, we just won't necessarily have as much extra as I would have liked to have had. We ended up with about 65 bales an acre, which for that field I would have been hoping for something closer to 100, but it is what it is, and hopefully we can get another. I don't even know what to expect for second cut on that field because there's not a lot of legumes, but hopefully another couple hundred bales off the field there anyways. And here's the old International 93 combine that it also hasn't run in 15 years, so I'll have to work on that the next little bit to get it going, since we'll probably have oats to harvest in 3 or 4 weeks. Our barn has 6 mows. This, what you're looking at here, would be kind of, you'd call it a mow. You can get, some of them are a little bit smaller and some of them are a little bigger, but they probably average about 100 bales per layer. And I think we went 10 or 11 high. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Yeah, 11 high. So there's our first cut. We ended up with right around 1,050 bales off of the little over 16 acres that we did here. We cut some earlier because we were short on feed, so it's probably 1,100 total off of the field. But so we stack it on in, so you're not when you then walk on it, you're not gonna trip on all the strings, and it piles in fairly nicely like this. So that mow I think is about 95 or 98 bales per layer. And then what we do is we'll throw it down, and it goes down through this hole, and then that's down right in front of where the heads of the cows are, so you can just feed it to them there. So this is what's the straw mow, so there's should be enough left. There's a layer below me, and then there's probably another 30 bales at that end. So that should get us to when we're ready for straw. Actually, we'll probably still have that full bottom layer left here, and then we'll get it cleaned out a bit because there's lots of chaff in here. But yeah, there's that, and then there's our. It's kind of we'll use this as our second cut mow, just because we won't have a ton of it. And then on the other side of this one, there's another mow that we didn't even use. We knew we were only going to have this much hay, and it's just nice and close to the hole. And then there's two on the far side of the barn. And then this is actually where there's the half wall up here. That's actually a granary inside there, which actually I don't know if we'll use it either this year because we've got another grain bin outside, and I don't think we'll fill it, so we shouldn't need to put anything in there. This is one of our bales. They probably weigh between 50 and 60 pounds, kind of the average. They're we use sisal twine, which is it comes from a plant. So I prefer it to the plastic, because if you get this out there, it'll eventually, it is treated, but it would eventually break down and decompose and go away, and that sounds a little better to me. And also it's actually not too bad on the hands, so we like that. But here's the mow in behind, so we just threw a few over because we weren't sure how tight we were going to be on space in this mow. Turns out they could have fit, but there's an empty mow. This is about as high as we'd normally go. Maybe one more row if we were trying to really squeeze it in. But it's the old barn. You can see, I don't know if you can see right there is the old fork. They used to put loose hay in the barn. So they'd run that along the track that goes the whole length of the barn and fill the mows that way, which was a lot of work, and you didn't fit nearly as much hay. But I like it. It is a big barn. You can see some of my stuff I gotta get cleaned out of here before we can start using all the mows, but everything in time. And if you don't like heights, the mow might not be for you. There's some of those ones. This doesn't have a ladder. Once this gets filled with straw, it's pretty easy to get into. But some of those, they have the ladder, and when the barn's really full and you're a row or two above the top beam there, the stepping out over the top to get onto those first rungs when I was a kid always made me a little nervous. Which I've never gone up there, and I don't really have any intention, but going up that would make me fairly nervous too. So next things for us then will be, one of them will be fixing up this combine, getting all our stuff ready for oats in about 3 or 4 weeks. And then I have to check on our oats and peas. I don't think that they'll be ready to go this week. I hope not. Want them to get a little more growth, but we'll go check on them. I expect before our oats and peas are ready to go though, or before our oats are ready to go, our oats and peas will be ready to go, so then we'll have to go cut and bale that, or we'll cut and rake it and we'll hire somebody to put it in wrapped around bales and bring it back here. So that's it for today's video. If you enjoyed the content, please like and subscribe to stay up to date with what's happening on Twin Creeks Farm. Have a good one.